Hey, what's up, good people? It's Jay Ray, the co-host of Q Points, and I wanted to come to you because there are two really important ways that you can support our show. One is by subscribing to it wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. Q Points is pretty much everywhere. The other thing that you can do is you can visit us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on Podchaser, and you can leave us a star rating. Please rate us 5 stars because you know you love Q Points. And on Apple Podcasts and on Podchaser, you can actually leave us a written review. It's not required, but it really does help to spread the word about the show, and it helps people to discover it as they're looking for new podcasts to listen to. We're always appreciative of you supporting Q Points. We thank you so much for all that you've done for us so far, and enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, it's Jay Ray. Podcasting is not just a passion for me and DJ Sir Daniel. It's a way for us to educate and inspire. There are a number of podcasts doing that for children, and one of them is What's Poppin' Penny, a podcast created and written by Tony Kennedy and voted 2023's best podcast for children 3 and up and families by Common Sense Media. Penny is a preschooler who discovers that an ancestral poem holds the key to unlocking the magical secrets of a teddy bear passed down from her grandpa, which is filled with her family's history. Tune in to the upcoming 2024 Juneteenth What's Poppin' Penny special. The show will feature guest star Miss Betty Reed Soskin. Miss Betty was a well-known songwriter in the civil rights movement. She became the oldest national park ranger at the age of 85, and among her many honors and awards, President Barack Obama presented her with a presidential commemorative coin at the National Christmas Tree Lighting Ceremony in 2015. Subscribe to What's Poppin' Penny wherever you listen to your podcasts, and be sure to share the show with young people. They will be sure to have a good time. Peace.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of Q Points Podcast. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is Jay Ray, sometimes known by my government as Johnny Ray Cornegay III. What's happening, people?
Q Points Podcast is a show that's dropping the needle on Black music history. And this episode, Jay Ray, we've had this one in the chamber for a minute, right?
We have.
We've been wanting to talk about this so bad because, you know, that's what we do. We're Q Points. We Jay Ray and I get on our tangents and about pop topics that just pop up in our heads. But we said, wait a minute. We need to talk about this with some people that this directly affects. Okay? Specifically.
Yep.
And we found our perfect matches because there's two of them. There's one for me, there's one for you. We can, you know, we're gonna have this.
This is the way those songs go.
Exactly.
That's exactly the way those songs go.
Okay, never mind. But listen,
so
I got on
sad.
my BWP t-shirt tonight.
You do got your BWP shirt on.
Because, Jay Ray, we are kids of the parental advisory sticker era. We, Tipper Gore, you know, God bless her, she's the one that slapped all those stickers on these records and made us want them even more. Because it was filled with content that was just so despicable, and you know, parents need to know what our kids are listening to, blah 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 blah, which is true. You know, some of it is true, but on this particular episode, we are talking about not only cringe songs that we like, even though we know we're not supposed to like them, but there is a kind of what those songs do and what kind of atmosphere they create.
Absolutely.
Specifically for women, not just in hip hop culture, but in entertainment as a whole. So we have some perfect guests to talk about that tonight. Why don't you tell them, first of all, before we do that, let everybody know how they can get in contact with us and keep up with us and check out that new Q Points merchandise that they're seeing around town a lot lately.
Absolutely. So, you know, a shout out. We haven't put this up yet, but my brother,
Yes.
Disco Disciple, was hanging out shout out to him. He was hanging out at the vinyl festival with Q Points bag. He was record shopping with his Q Points bag. And not only that, shout out to him because that evening he got to spin at the vinyl bar in Philly and was just spinning some records, you know, all of that because my brother is just doing his thing and I'm really proud of him. So shout out to him. And one of the things that you can get is our bags. We have bags, shirts, mugs. It's all fly. If you're trying to get fly and keep the lights on at Q Points, you see these lights, all of these cameras and things that me and Sir Daniel have going on, that costs money. You know what I'm saying? So you can support us by making purchases in our store. That's store.qpoints.com. That's that part. There's a whole bunch of free stuff too that you can do. For instance, if you are listening to our voices, seeing our faces, that is the perfect thing to do. Thank you so much for doing that. Subscribe wherever you are tuning in. We would appreciate that support. And if you want to go a step further, share the show with your friends, family, your colleagues, because if you love Q Points, chances are they will love Q Points. And finally, if you visit our website, qpoints.com, that's QUEUE, points.com, you can join the newsletter. We not only have all types of articles and things that we do on our blog, but you can get all types of other information. So you can sign up on our website. And I want to let's tell the people about our guests because this is so dope. So before I read their bios, because these bios are for real, so we're going to get into that. I met Tashmica during the Air Amplify Fellowship. So as you all know, I believe we talked about it on the show. Q Points was part of the Air Fellowship, the Air Amplify Fellowship, which was a fellowship to help podcast creators enhance skills in marketing. So it was 8 weeks. It was intense because it was 2 sessions a week. And I had the opportunity to meet one of the hosts of this podcast, the Popaganda podcast. So I'm going to read their bios and then we're going to bring them on. But first and foremost, Tashmica Torok is a queer Black woman who centers her work around connecting dope ass people to liberatory ideas so that we can all get free. As an abolitionist, Tashmica is cultivating her community's ability to imagine, build, and maintain ways to intervene on acts of violence without relying on police, prisons, or other state institutions as a path towards ending state-sanctioned violence against Black and brown people. She is also the founding co-director of the Firecracker Foundation, a healing community working to end child sexual abuse based in Lansing, Michigan. Also with us is Shannon Perez-Darby, a founding member of the Accountable Communities Consortium. Shannon Perez-Darby is a queer mixed Latina, anti-violence advocate, author, activist, and consultant working to create the conditions to support loving, equitable relationships and communities. Shannon Perez-Darby centers queer and trans communities of color while working to address issues of domestic and sexual violence, accountability, and abolition. These two folks collectively make up the Popaganda podcast. And listen, this is the coolest thing. So their tagline is, "Come for the pop culture, stay for the abolition." Y'all, Q Points, we are so honored to welcome Shannon and Tashmica to Q Points. Hey, y'all.
Welcome.
Hey. We are so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
This is so dope. Y'all are so, this is great. Congratulations on Popaganda. Congratulations on just the show is just so dope and resonates, but also teaches. And so we just want to first of all, big up that. And congratulations and just welcome y'all. How you feeling?
Thank you. That is the sweetest, warmest welcome. I'm just my heart is bursting with joy. I just so appreciate y'all having us here and been able to be in this conversation with y'all.
Yes, absolutely.
It is truly our pleasure.
Absolutely. So we're going to actually start the conversation with talking about Popaganda, because one of the things, so for everybody who is listening, as soon as we're done this, you see the name on the IG down at the bottom. If you got your phone, just go on over to IG right now and follow Popaganda Pod. It also has the information on how you can subscribe to the show. Okay, so do that while we're having this conversation. But let's talk about the show itself. So how did y'all two become pop culture besties? I love that that's your thing. How did y'all become pop culture besties, and how did this show come about?
Well, it happened through a mutual friend. Shannon and I are both friends with Mia Mingus. We both love her so much. She is a transformative justice practitioner, leader, and she's also just a very joyful person whose favorite movie happens to be Jurassic Park. And so, and one day I was saying to her that all I want to do is start a podcast so I can talk about the transformative justice themes that I see in shows like The Walking Dead or Grey's Anatomy. And she was like, you have to talk to my friend Shannon.
And I had basically the exact same experience, which is I'm an activist in residence with Just Beginnings Collaborative. We were doing some work with Mia. I said to Mia, all I want to do is talk about pop culture and transformative justice. And she said, you should talk to Tashmica Torok. And she match made us into pop culture besties. I was just about a year ago, and here we are.
Wow. And so y'all hadn't met, y'all didn't know each other before that?
Nope, not since we started this project. We weren't friends before. We just jumped in, and here we are.
Wow. Can I ask that? I know that wasn't on our list of things, but I do want to ask, what was that like in terms of that first kind of getting on and getting started with the show? How did y'all kind of figure it out as you were going along?
Gosh, with a lot of laughter, a lot of storytelling, because we just both deeply love TV. I think our first episode is probably the best capture of us just sharing the history of how TV helped us survive, helped us learn about who we were in the world across lots of different things. And I don't think there was, and Shannon can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was just like, hi, hello, I think we're best friends now. I don't think it really, and then we were like, let's talk into a microphone. And that's how it happened.
And you know that feeling where you watch a TV show, you listen to a piece of music, you see a meme, and you immediately want to talk to somebody about it?
Yes.
That is the motivation. And for me, there is no tension between my love of pop culture and my transformative justice and abolitionist values. Like, I am an integrated human. There's space for joy. All of that brings me a lot of joy. But for many people, there are tensions there. And so for us, we were like, great, well, let's just invite people to like things and invite people to bring our values into the things that bring us joy. So The Bachelor, Kardashians, things that don't otherwise align with my vision of the world, but I like watching those shows. And this is a vehicle to align our values with the things that bring us joy.
I love that.
I love it too, J-Ray. It sounds like we're on a double date here.
Yeah, it does.
No lie, when the same way that you two align is how J-Ray and I have aligned when it comes to this music thing. Like, all of our friends in common will tell you the same thing. They will sit and they'll hear us have a conversation and just be like, those two are going at it again. Those two, they're doing their thing. They're in their world talking about music ad nauseum. And it literally was just like a continuum. We were just like, we need to do a podcast. Here we are discussing a lot of the parallels of what we discuss and what you guys talk about as well. And so here we are at this topic about cringe-worthy music, cringe-worthy songs that we know we're not supposed to like, but it conflicts with our morals, our values. But gosh darn it, we still enjoy it. Can you two share right off the top of your head a song, an album that you was just like, oh, this is so wrong, but this is my jam. I can't let anybody know. It's like you're walking out of the record store in a trench coat and you have that underneath your trench coat.
I'm going to let Shannon go first because I did threaten to steal hers. So just so there's no question.
I can't wait to hear what it is.
You gotta hear it now.
Well, the first thing that came to mind was "It Wasn't Me" by Shaggy, because it's so that song is so freaking catchy. Like you're just like,
It is.
and every time you listen to the lyrics, the more you're like, what? What is and I'm sure it's not the first song because I was in high school when that came out. There have to have been cringy songs I loved before that, but that was the first thing that popped in my head, which now has been stuck in my head since for 24 hours since you sent the prompts. And
Tashmica, what about you?
Oh, oh man, I'm going to put this on the internet. It's never going away. But there were some songs that are farther down the line. But when I think of myself as a child with my boom box in my bedroom, and the first song that I have a memory of being like, it's Two Live Crew, Horny.
Yeah.
I'm Too Horny.
Yes.
The way my grade school self was singing those lyrics as a child. And of course, in preparation, Johnny, I like to make playlists. I pulled that song over and I was listening to it and I was like, this is terrible. That's number one.
So it's interesting that y'all pick those. Okay, so the first song I thought of, actually, I realized was bad way later after I became an adult. But if there was a song that as a child I kind of knew that I shouldn't be listening to in a lot of ways, it was Cringe. I mean, Prince has a lot of cringe stuff, but I remember hearing Head when I was like 7.
We're in grade school then.
And yeah. And I'm like, this is a jam, but also I'm like, there's something about this song. I didn't know what it was about the song that I shouldn't be listening to. But yeah, I certainly was Shannon. I'm certainly was 7 listening to Head and thinking it was dope, and this woman was on her way to be wed, and
and she was just a virgin.
She was just a virgin on her way to be wed. She was.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
So okay, so I have something it struck me a little more recently. As a DJ, sometimes I throw on stuff and I listen to it, and this was before Me Too became a serious movement. And I remember specifically talking to you, J. Ray, about this. We were talking about cringy songs. I think it was the Christmas songs. I gotta go, but I really can't stay. It's cold outside. So they were talking about that. And then it made me think of Aaron Hall's Don't Be Afraid. Dope song from the Juice soundtrack. When they remixed it, it's one of my favorite. It's like a quintessential 90s jam where when you hear the beat, you automatically, you start East Coast stomping and you having a great time. But then you hear the girl say, what did she say, J. Ray? Just when he says, "Don't be afraid."
He's "Don't be afraid." He's like,
"You push me away, the more you make me more horny." And
it's making me more horny.
Wait a minute.
Right.
She's underage and she's scared and she doesn't know she wants to do this, but he's saying, "Don't worry, don't be afraid. I'm still going to take it, and I'm going to we're going to do this thing." And so for a long time, I started being conflicted about whether I'm going to play this anymore in public because these things are being highlighted and people are starting to reflect on these records and on these artists, and a lot more information is coming out about these artists, and people are telling their stories about interactions with them. And it's so funny watching. I played it recently. I'm not gonna lie. I played it recently at the bar, and I just saw this woman. She was just going in. She was just bopping her life away, and I was like, wow. I wonder if she's paid attention to the lyrics, or is this just her jam and she just remembers it and has good memories of it and is unable to separate the two?
Well, it's interesting, and I definitely, as I've experienced this. So I've experienced it twice. As I gotten older, Keith Sweat's right and a wrong way is a problem. Like, he's like, you may be young, but you're ready to learn. And I'm like, sir, sir.
Yeah.
I was singing this, by the way, when I was like 10, because this song came out in 1987. And I'm thinking, like, what in the world did they put on this record and have me as a child singing to? They still play this song. This song is a classic R&B staple.
Yep.
Other ones, "Do Me" by Belle Biv DeVoe.
Oh my gosh, yes, yes.
"Do Me" by Belle Biv DeVoe. When it gets to the rap, and it is underage, backstage underage, and you're like, what? And they
Wait a minute.
still
skip over that.
and they still play it. So it came on the radio. I think I said this to Sir Daniel. I might have said it on the show. I was in the car within the last year, and it came on, and I'm like, let me see what they do. Let me see if they are going to like bleep anything. No. "Do Me" is playing full out. And so and I'm curious, y'all spend so much time talking about this kind of duality. Shannon, you mentioned this early, but pop culture and its impact, right? I'm just curious, as y'all reflect on this stuff kind of in pop culture, how do y'all make the decisions about how you approach these things?
Shannon, tell them the rules.
Our very formal rules we've come up with, obviously, that are very ready. I always start with, particularly, our work always comes back to domestic and sexual violence. So depends on the room you're in, if that feels like a bummer or if that feels like a compelling, important conversation to be having. And for me, we live in rape culture. We live in culture where domestic and sexual violence is so normalized. It's the water we're swimming in. It's so common. And so instead of being in resistance of saying like, oh, you can't consume anything that touches on questions of domestic and sexual violence, for me, it's the question of like, how are we in relationship to it? So just facing that this is a reality, that there is creepy, coercive, like stuff happening in the air is just a common experience for many people. And so there's the like this thing of like turning towards that, and that is often how we deal with and address, instead of just shutting down, which so much happens when we talk about domestic and sexual violence. We're just like, I don't know, la 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 la. What would it take to just say, okay, yeah, that's creepy, those lyrics are creepy, yeah, we're talking about like person who's saying no, like a woman who's saying no, a girl who's saying no, and you're saying like, I'm just gonna keep going,
right,
and to actually just move towards that instead of away from it is one of the strategies I and like we use in as we talk about pop culture, especially problematic pop culture.
And
go ahead.
The thing that's interesting too, I know I said earlier that this becomes a parenting podcast for me very quickly, but I do think that because I have youngish baby adults in the world, one of the strategies that I used was like, let's read those lyrics out loud. And it wasn't meant to shame. It's kind of the same thing I do with reality dating or wedding shows, where I'm like, ooh, they should not be talking to each other like that. That is so rude. Or he's being so insensitive, or she, like that wasn't very honest. I think there is space for recognizing, like you said, DJ Sir Daniel, when that beat drops, there is a reason that when a beat drops, our bodies move. And the beat drop before the lyrics hit. Sometimes you don't even hear the lyrics at all for like a really long time. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, my body has learned to respond to this beat for however many years. And now I'm like supposed to shut that part of my brain off when I hear that song. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work, period. And if we're going to have an honest conversation about the ways that sexual violence, domestic violence impact our community, then we have to stop pretending that people are creating art in order to promote it, rather than they actually are in it. They actually believe it. This is a part of how they're moving through the world in that moment when they wrote that song. And there are people who are in that moment with them that do believe that in that moment. And that's what art is. It's a moment in time that we are encapsulating through the thing that we can create. Whether you're a film person or TV or music, you're telling a story about my tattoos, right?
Yeah.
This is like a story of my life on my body. It's art. We can't so quickly pull that apart and so easily dismiss it because it's meaningful.
And see, and this is why Tashmica and Shannon are the perfect people to discuss this topic, because J. Ray, when we were talking about bringing this to the table, I automatically think about most musicians, specifically musicians. A lot of their muses are women. The inspiration for a lot of songs are the women in their lives, the women that they encounter. Hip hop, my God, one of the biggest songs in hip hop history is Roxanne, Roxanne. And if you want to talk about, a story of culture where a man is trying to proposition a young woman and how that can either go right or go wrong depending on how he approaches her, that's one of the prime examples. Recently, the musician Tank, the R&B singer, and star of his own podcast, R&B Money, was on The Breakfast Club, and the discussion was around how a lot of today's R&B specifically lacks a lot of that finesse. And that, the sweet touch that a lot of the R&B male artists used to have back in the day, right? Their approach to music. And and Tank was just like, I want men, these are his words, I want men to fall in love with the again.
Right.
Are
Yes, you can say it.
Okay. He's like, I want men to fall in love with the pussy again. And he meant what he was saying, and I picked up what he was saying. I was like, you all act as if you hate women now. And is that why we're not getting the Marvin Gaye-esque type of music, the Teddy Pendergrass type of music that we used to get? He was like, I want y'all to fall in love with women again. And I guess, does it feel as if male musicians, is he right? Have they lost that touch? Or what is it going to take for men to start putting women or start keeping women in mind when they create this music again?
All I can think of right now is how many women on TikTok would rather be in the woods with a bear than a man. I don't know if you've seen that trend right now.
Oh, trust. That was going to be, that was a question.
Right. And, for some reason, I haven't been on TikTok very often the past couple of weeks. So my son actually asked me with zero context. He's like, Mom, would you rather be in the woods with a bear or a man? And I was like, a bear. And he was like, what? And I was like,
Always
the bear is not going to torture me. The bear is going to kill me and eat me. And that is the end of the story. That is the whole thing. That is not the case with men. And you didn't say what kind of man, where I met him. You said a man. I don't know this man. Please let the bear kill me very quickly and be done with it. And so I don't know. I feel like there were always crooners. There's always been romantic music that has happened that Black men are spearheading. And, that I think of Jodeci. As soon as you said that, I was like, ooh, yeah. Because, you got that, you know what I mean? There's like a whole, I know exactly what the call is. I know what that felt like. And I don't know that lack of that kind of music comes from a lack of love as much as people in general don't know how to be an intimate, honest, healthy relationship. We don't have a lot of models for that. And so I wonder too if there is a sort of disillusionment with those songs that we grew up hearing and the romance and what is it? Close the door, Boys to Men, right? Like we right? Light the candles. We knew what romance was supposed to look like. And then we also have R. Kelly, and we have these romances that we thought we were watching in real time, that we thought we understood, that we thought that was the goal, right? I remember being a teenage girl who only wanted to be Aaliyah, right? Like if I could have had the swoop, I would have, right?
Right.
You know, and there was
Right.
no world in which I would have been wearing a half top or crop top and jeans like that, but I really wanted to be.
Yeah.
That was the goal, but that wasn't real.
Right.
And so I don't know. That's sort of where that's where I'm curious.
Yeah. Because Tashmica and I are mind melded in our pop culture, the man or the bear was exactly the first thing I thought of. So I was just like, of course, that's what you said, because we are weirdly synced up in our references. Yeah, the other thing I think about is one way that men could do that is it be in good relationship with women in their lives and think about women as collaborators rather than subjects of their art. And so when you have women who are producing art, who are in the process, not just thought of as like the object of the of the story, or just like, you know, or just the subject, that is a great way to bring more women into art, into the music, into the medium, in good relationship, instead of just in an objectifying way where, you know, women are, you're talking about women but not to women.
Yes. Thank you both so much for that, because I absolutely think there's so many layers to this particular conversation. And Shannon, thank you for mentioning like that. So men being in good, healthy relationship with the women in their lives will help. So Tank, here's the answer to your question. Men being in good, healthy relationships with the women in their lives, period, will then have them do the things that we are asking. Because one of the things I also think about, so many of the crooners that we are even talking about, when we think about a Marvin Gaye, when we think about these folks, they had very complicated relationships with women and were violent to women. And just, and I say this, I know I've said this on the show before, Let's Get It On was written about a 17-year-old girl. That album was written about this 17-year-old girl that he went on to marry, right?
That's right.
And just putting that in context of like, this song is absolutely gorgeous. Let's just understand how it was made. And you know, to that point.
And also, sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Tashmica.
I was just gonna say, also, can maybe the pussy not be the goal? Like, can there be, you know, like, could there perhaps be some other things about women that we love?
They're gonna have to negotiate that.
I know. I'm
You're
so
have to
sorry.
negotiate.
You're right. I just feel like there's like, you know what it's like? It reminds me of going to see some comedy, and like when you watch an amateur comedian who is also a man, and you're like, we're not 12 anymore. Not every joke has to be about masturbation. Like, we can write deeper context.
Right.
And this sort of feels like that to me. I'm like, yes, being intimate sexually with people, with, you know, and with someone you love is beautiful. And let's not kid ourselves. That's what we want. Sure. Also, when it comes to women, especially Black women, being hypersexualized and talked about as objects, like Shannon was talking about, it's like, maybe could we write something where we're talking about how powerful women are? And, you know, we don't need I don't need Who Runs the World girls. Like, I don't need that. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm nobody mad.
Hold on. The Beehive is like, let me log on to
Chill.
Tashmica Torok with a K.
Everyone, I'm sorry. I love her. Okay, I bow down. But like, I don't need that. It's like, it's actually more simple than that. It's actually as simple and basic as women are humans who contribute to the world in powerful ways. And that actually doesn't have to be tied to sex or birthing babies or keeping a man's house or feeding the man before you feed the children, or, you know, or it goes on and on. It could just be as simple as we exist and we contribute. And if you can't think of a woman who is a role model that you can talk about in your music, I feel like maybe you need to come to my house and I'll parent you for just kidding. I won't.
Do
But,
not
like,
say you better be charging a lot of money to be parenting some adult men, Tashmica.
I will be.
It comes at a cost.
Yeah, that'll be the monetization that I'm looking for. But yeah, there is, it takes intention. If I want my algorithm to feed me men that I value and respect because we share the same values in the world, then I have to seek them out, find them, listen to them, and ingest their content, right? The same is true for women. If you are only listening to men and how men talk about women and what men value about women, you're not listening to women. You are not valuing women's voices. And trust and believe that men talk way more than women do in every meeting, in everything that you do. Men are going to be talking more. So it takes a lot of energy, well, unless you're in the room with me, but it takes a lot of energy and effort to actually seek out the voices of the people who are often marginalized and silenced in the world's conversations.
Which brings up a really interesting part of this conversation, because certainly talking about the men and their relationship to the women and how, these songs, but also we see this a lot on social media. There are women who in some cases have made excuses for some of these men who have either, really bad reputations or have been proven to be offenders or problematic, right? There are several that we can name that I won't name because the stuff is alleged, right? But how do y'all, one, feel about that in this kind of moment that we're in? And two, any advice for some of those women?
Yeah. I mean, women live in patriarchy and misogyny too. And so we're all breathing the air. We're all getting the messages. And plenty of us do things that hurt us. I sit for 5 hours at a time in front of my computer without getting up and eating food and looking far away so it doesn't fuck up my eyes. That's not good for me. And I know that's not good for me. And I still do it because of whatever reason I'm doing it. So, and people are also allowed to do things that aren't good for them, quote unquote. And so, I think to just understand that context. And whenever I'm trying to understand particularly impact. So, in anti-violence work, you talk about intent versus impact, and to really look at who's suffering and who's benefiting from that. And we know that when women are aligning with men who are abusive, it usually is harming those women. It usually doesn't go great for those women. And so what I have is lots of compassion and understanding that that's probably not going great for them, or is not going to go great for them long term. And so part of the abolitionist work too is holding this long vision of change and understanding that not everybody's there, right? And so I don't just cut people off because they don't have the same values as me, or they're not doing the same thing. I hold a radical vision where everyone can have what they need outside of harmful systems, and that includes women who are being harmed by misogyny who are lining up with men. That doesn't mean they shouldn't have maybe natural consequences for harming other women or just for acting bad. But I don't personally feel the need to hate on women who are aligning with men who are problematic. I get it, and I want a different thing, but I get it.
What's the word, everybody? It's your man, Mr. Al Peter, Mr. Peterson's Neighborhood, and the MPN Network. And I'm here today to tell you about what the MPN Network consists of. The MPN Network is an entertainment as well as a developing media company based in Jacksonville, Florida. Our goal is to highlight various creatives that exist in spaces of music, visual arts, podcasting, and more. Within the network, we have multiple brands that will parallel with creatives, events, and other brands. The Neighborhood Podcast Network is a collective of independent podcast shows that has various topics ranging from the latest culture news, mental health, sports, and leisure conversations. We also have the Groove Suite brand that explores the realm of soul, hip-hop, R&B, funk, and more. The Groove Suite. Our health and beauty section gives a view on how to keep yourself in shape, in style, and in tune with your body and your mental. Last, we have the Fly Socks and Tees, an annual summer event that brings creatives together to celebrate the past years and victories that were received. So swing by our website, mpn-llc.com, and subscribe so you can stay up on what's happening with the neighbors and the groovers. Also follow us on our Facebook page as well as Instagram and Twitter, MPN Management. Building but becoming to the top.
So what people, the conversation is going, well, what about redemption? What about giving offenders a second chance and, being empathetic to them? And, all of this, a decade has passed and they've grown, they've changed. What, those caveats start being thrown into the conversation. What about that? What about giving people a second chance? And those are the conversations that's what these, a lot of the women that are being pinpointed for having those feelings and being outspoken about giving people a second chance, they're being eviscerated for that online as well.
Yeah.
So where do you guys stand on that? What about, giving people a second chance?
I could not be happy you're asking this question because my life's work is basically in response to this question. So bless you. Thank you. So, I am part of the Accountable Communities Consortium, and part of the work we're doing is talking about accountability and what does accountability meaningfully mean. And we know that accountability is not policing and criminalization. We know that that is a false idea, that that's not what's happening there. And I believe that accountability is possible, including for people who've caused grievous harm, who have sexually assaulted someone, who has been abusive, who has taken someone else's life. I believe that is possible. And the conditions that make that possible are often very far away from our reality. So that includes things like people having what they need. So safe and stable housing, connection, like having their basic needs met is a really important part of accounting for the harm you've caused, for stopping the harm and accounting for it. And I want a world where people who've caused grievous harm have pathways to accountability. And I know for many people that's very far away, but I believe deeply in that. And I believe if we want a world without prisons and policing, we're actually going to have to get really serious about the questions of accountability for people who cause grievous harm, because I don't think police and criminalization is the answer. So as communities, we're going to have to figure out a meaningful pathway where people who have been grievously harmed, like have caused grievous harm, can be accountable. Some of those conditions are acknowledging the harm you've done, not continuing it, stopping it. So I just want to say, often people who are harmful in public, they have not stopped the harm,
right,
said they're sorry, accounted for it, showed meaningful change, or even an intent to make meaningful change. So that's the quickest answer I can give to my life's work. But I believe accountability is important and necessary, and we can all get busy at creating the conditions that actually make that possible.
Yeah, there's a reason why we love Negan from The Walking Dead. We love that character arc. He was the most murdery man, and then all of a sudden he was captured and he was in jail, and then they're like, well, shit, the zombies are coming. We better let him go and figure out what we're supposed to do with this person who we were afraid of. And oh, wait, weren't we also murdering his people? Oh, right. And then we're going to use him to murder other people because it serves our interests, almost like our military. So like we recognize ourselves in these shows. That's what the Popaganda podcast is really about, is that when we see those moments and we're like, oh my gosh, Negan is taking care of Maggie's child. He murdered the love of her life before she even had this child, and she has gotten to a place where she's like, well, this is the conditions, this is where we're at. It's because there's a piece of us, we have all done something wrong. We may not have all done grievous harm to the extent that we're talking about here, but we have all done something that has hurt somebody else, and we have all had to figure out either how to practice accountability and be in right relationship with the person that we hurt, or to avoid accountability and to allow that hurt to continue. And we have watched in all of our relationships the consequences of both choices. And so when we're thinking about the world we want to live in, I think oftentimes we look at celebrities because it's easier to look farther away and be like, yeah, we can just forgive them. It's cool. It's been 10 years. I think it's interesting that some people seem to think that accountability is only related to how much distance you have from the harm, but not any of the practical things that Shannon just named. And so there are steps, there are things that we have practiced in community, but you have to be willing to do that in your own personal life with the people that are right next to you versus pushing that idea outward towards a celebrity who you actually don't have control or power over to even pretend to make them be accountable. It's a little too far afield. We need to focus our gaze on the people around us and how we treat those people and how we practice accountability there, because that's the part that teaches, that's how the world changes.
You know what? I absolutely thank y'all so much, because what this is reminding us of so much is it is so important that we practice and center the relationships with the people closest to us, because it reverberates out into the world. It enters the songs.
Yeah.
If we
That's
are
right.
practicing it in our lives with those people, it's not this amorphous idea that you're writing about because you think this is what love feels like. It's like, no, I know love.
Yes.
And I think all good art is made from experience. Like the art I love the most is because it has been embodied by someone's own practice and experience. Personally, that is the art and music that I like to listen to and consume. And so it has to be embodied. You have to actually have practiced it to share it.
Yeah.
Well, and I also want to talk a little bit about history and how we even find ourselves in this moment, right? We're here on the dropping the needle on Black music history. Not that I pay any attention at all about what goes around here. But we are from communities and cultures who have experienced violence at the hands of colonizers,
Yes.
and at the hands of enslavers, at the hands of people in this country who are not Black, not people of color. And part of that was intense sexual violence on Black women.
Yes.
Part of that meant that Black men were experiencing sexual violence within enslavement. And when enslavement ended and when Jim Crow ended, it's not like there was a Red Cross community waiting there with blankets and toothbrushes and therapists to walk us out of the crisis of violence and harm that we experience. No, part of the reason why we still find ourselves, in my humble opinion, this is not a peer-reviewed article, that we still make excuses is because it protects us from the reality of the relationships that harm us. We have been in a practice as women of finding stories that we can tell ourselves, stories that we can tell one another about how violence happens and who is at fault, in order to survive the men who are in our families. Because most times when we experience sexual and domestic violence, it's not from strangers.
Right.
It's not, right? It's people that we know, love, and trust, whether you are a child or an adult. And so I know that there are women who are saying these things because it is rote, embodied memory that this is how we survive the men that we love. This is how we survive our siblings, our uncles, our grandfathers, our fathers. And until we are able to safely tell the truth, we are always going to find people telling the same stories. And women are actually not responsible for creating that safety.
It's this is right on time, Tashmica, because speaking of creating safe spaces, right? Community. Our show is based around music, and music is a tool of creating community, and we gather to listen, to watch these artists perform. And now, hearkening back to something you said, one of you said earlier about now women have agency on stage, on the microphone, are writing their own lyrics, saying that rapping and whatnot, but that doesn't necessarily protect them either. Because recently we saw a young lady, a new rap artist by the name of Stunner Girl. She was on stage performing, and I don't know what possessed this brother to do that, but got close enough to the stage where he slapped her butt where I don't know if he thought nobody was going to do anything or say anything, but he just felt emboldened to go to close to the stage and slap her butt. Actually, that happened to Beyonce once, as a matter of fact, in performance, and it's quite shocking that a lot of men feel emboldened enough to and feel like they have agency to just touch somebody on their body part while they're on stage performing. But as you take in, nowadays, as we take in media and we go to shows and concerts, like, and I know you can't speak for all women, but do you feel safe in these environments when we get together in community to enjoy these things? Like, but do you feel safe?
It's interesting because I am a 43-year-old woman who has 3 children, and I have been married. I'm currently transitioning out of my marriage in a really good and beautiful way. And I called myself going out one night. And I sort of feel like once you get to 35, there's a statistic that your chances of being sexually assaulted go down. Why would I know that? I don't know, because I'm a woman living in the United States. But it's kind of like the car insurance, your deductible goes down. Anyway,
Wow.
so I go out and I am not thinking about this really. I'm in a space that I know. I'm in a space with people that I know. There are other people there, of course, but I'm just thinking, I'm a grown woman. I've made humans. I'm safer than what I was when I was younger. And I was walking through the crowd and there was a younger man walking towards me, and he didn't read any of that age on me, allegedly. And he looked at me and I could tell he was kind of like, he was like, she's cute. But I didn't think anything of it because I am cute. So I keep walking, right? Obviously, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Right. So he picked up what I was laying down. Got
Yes.
it. So I keep walking, and sure enough, he grabs my ass.
Yeah.
And I was bewildered. It first of all burst my bubble because lots of people in this community know me. And I often say my visibility is a piece that keeps me safer. People know who I am. People look out for me. People look out for my children. And it was a real come to Jesus moment where I was like, here we are again in a crowded space, regardless of my work, regardless of who I am, what I have done, how old I am still considered an object to men of all ages. And I was not prepared for that reality. So even in spaces where I feel like I have done the prep and I'm with my friends, right? They give you all the victim blaming things that you're supposed to be doing. What were you wearing? What were you? It actually doesn't matter. We aren't safe. I believe safety is a myth. I think we would really like to believe that we are safe. It's actually really important that we don't believe that. It's really important that we, as Shannon has said, turn towards the violence and recognize that none of us are safe until we are all safe. And part of the reason that police and prisons need to be abolished is because they are sites of harm for not just sexual violence, but child sexual abuse. And that also includes detention centers and ICE. Like, children are being harmed, and we have created spaces where that goes unaddressed. And what is really important about that is that when people in power are allowed to harm people that we consider less than, guess where they go, y'all? People who work in prisons and jails and detention centers, they have families. Cops that sexually assault, the second most reported act of police violence is sexual violence. And guess where those cops go? They go home. They go to your community. They go where your children are going to school. And I'm not trying to create some kind of like moral panic. You can hear about that on our podcast when we talk about satanic panic. But I am saying that when we allow some people to harm people we don't care about, they come back around and harm other people. And it's not, it's like they say, you disappear people, you don't create accountability, you don't create safety when you put someone in incarceration. This is that same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so mostly beautifully said, just what Tashmica said. And so I don't have too much different to offer. I'm also a 40-year-old woman who is not trying to go out that much these days. And so my relationship to that has changed throughout age, throughout time, throughout just what I'm doing with my days. And so mostly my spaces are so curated that for myself, I don't walk around feeling worried about violence. And I know all the, like, just like the experience Tashmica had, I'm intimately aware that that is under my best conditions. I think I'm safe-ish, and we know that may or may not be true. And I just, that's part of reality, is being a woman in the world, or any person targeted for violence in the world.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for sharing. There's going to be a lot. There's so much here that we can dig into. But as we wrap up, so one of the things we definitely, of course, we're a music podcast, and we have problematic faves. We've actually talked about several of them. We did a Kaya show this year. Last year we did an Azalea Banks show. So we are no stranger to problematic faves and trying to, wrestle through that work. But okay, so if y'all are at an event, think award show. Popaganda Podcast Awards, or
we were just talking about doing this. It might have to happen. You just sealed it. You just sealed it.
Listen, and your problem, you know what I'm saying? And your problematic fave, you don't know how they got there, but they're there. You're like, all of a sudden, problematic fave is sitting here and they are right in front of you. What do you whisper to them? What are your suggestions or your pleas that you would make to them about their music? If you had an opportunity, if they said, Shannon, Tashmica, what should I be doing? What would y'all say?
Hey, little mama, let me whisper in your ear. That's all I heard. That's all I heard when you said
Hey, little
that.
mama, let me whisper. Yes.
Yeah,
I was not expecting that one, Tashmica. Good on you. Good on you for that one. You pulled that one from the archives.
I'm going to let Shannon actually answer, but I had to get that out. I had to get that part out.
I adore you, Tashmica. Yeah, the first thing, maybe not the first thing, but what came to my mind, as you've noticed, I'm not short-winded, so I would have to be like, and I'd be like, do you want to go out with me later so I can talk to you about your behavior? A little bit of a less enticing invitation than something snappy. But who came to my mind was Lizzo, so really thinking about, especially with Lizzo's
good one.
right now. And I love Lizzo. Like I love her, and I have a best friend who does not love Lizzo, and so we are a constant. She's just like, she's dead to me. And so particularly the lawsuit. Like I feel like I have an idea about what happened, the conditions of the lawsuit she's in right now. I don't know her, obviously, but I guess my assessment of that situation is, I suspect Lizzo was not trying to do any harm. What I suspect happened is that if you have never been an employer before, if you are in the music industry, if you are trying to be everybody's best friend, the line between friendship and employer gets very confusing. And if you are a person who then suddenly has power and wealth and money, and you suddenly have this institutional responsibility, and you're also trying to be like, hey, bestie, that a lot of messy things happen when people started out as peers and then somebody moves into leadership or moves into having more resource. And I think that's part of what happened. And so, of course, if you're taking your besties to the sex show in Amsterdam, like, have at it, have a good time, tell your bestie no, and flattening. And I suspect her whole world is probably her music and her work. And so flattening that then, her backup dancers are her friends is, I suspect, part of the dynamic that happened there. And so, if you're her backup dancer, it's like, actually, this is a really big gig for me. This is a big deal. This is my job. We are not friends. You seem lovely, but we're not friends. And I do feel an obligation now to go to the after show, to go to the thing, to play along, to have fun. And so what I would say to Lizzo is to get really clear about her role. And it can be confusing if you haven't felt powerful historically. But she is powerful in that context, extremely powerful and influential. And so you have to change change your orientation to your responsibility and role. And it might mean that her world is smaller, but figuring out who are your peers to go to this sex show in Amsterdam, and that's probably not your employees. And so that's the conversation I would have with Lizzo if she were so interested.
Yeah, and I was thinking about Nicki Minaj and the Pink Friday album. And, you know, especially around the sexual violence and justifying, just like we were just talking about. And, you know, just the same way, you know, Shannon, I have a hard time hating on women because 1 in 3 women have experienced some form of sexual violence. And when you're a Black woman, that statistic goes up. And I feel like when I'm witnessing Nicki Minaj's behavior, I just want to give her this sounds so a little Sesame Street, but I literally just want to know what's going on. And I think, you know, I challenge people who are in relationship with one another when someone is doing something that is so outside of what you would consider good values, there's something ain't right. Right. And sometimes you know that person and you can be like, I know those aren't your values. And you can just be like, hey, I love you so much. And this is not okay. You are harming yourself. You are harming other people. Can we just stop? Number one, can we just take a break, take a breath, get off of Twitter for a hot second? And let's just maybe explore why you think this is okay. And let me tell you why it hurts me that you're doing this. Because it's not going to be a crowd of people with pitchforks that's going to change someone's mind. It's actually going to be because someone loved them enough in their circle and had the values that shared enough values so that they could have a rich conversation about the pain that exists in here and why we're making the choices we're making. It's really hard to do that when you are in a public beef where your ego is involved and you feel like you have to always punch back rather than you're addressing symptoms of the thing that you're doing versus stopping and being like, actually, there's a lot of stuff going on in me that is causing this. And I haven't quite figured out why why I feel the way that I do or why this is causing this much of a stir in me that I have to act this way. But it's worth taking the time to do that.
J. Ray, another one.
You tell Nicki Minaj to call me. I'll give her a hug. I promise.
Yes.
Nikki, Onika, you have
Nikki.
the open invitation. Tashmica is there for you. You don't have to continue on this path. But I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, J. Ray. I knew it was going to. This is exactly what I knew it was going to be. I knew it was going to be fortifying. And I want our listeners to become your listeners. And why don't you and your friends get with me and my friends.
And we can be friends.
And I want all of us to please follow Popaganda, follow Tashmica and Shannon, get into their podcast. As a matter of fact, both of you, please let our listeners know where they can find you and how they can get a piece of the Popaganda.
Well, you can listen to the Popaganda podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also find all of our episodes on popagandapod.com. You can find our Instagram at popagandapod. Any other things that we're making sure to let people know, Tashmica?
You can join our broadcast channel where sometimes I share our behind the scenes texts and chats because I am always harassing Shannon with something that I just found out or vice versa.
We do that all day.
I love it.
So if you want to get into our secret text thread, that's on Instagram. Yeah, those are all the places you can find us. And, I just want to really quickly say that part of what the Popaganda podcast is also about is that we really believe that the world can be different. And we really believe that you are a part of making that happen, that each one of us has a responsibility to the liberation of one another, that we are collectively in this together, and that it can be joyful. Like, I know we're talking about like really hard things, but I hope you heard how much laughter also exists here, because this is sci-fi. We are world building, and we are storytelling to help us all vision a way that the world can be different. And that's the part of the brain. Like, we want to just dive into that little part of your electric meatball and talk about transformative justice and abolition, and see a world that we all can be, where we can all belong and be cared for.
Oh my goodness. Y'all, Shannon Perez-Darby, Tashmica Torok, hosts of the Popaganda podcast. You can get it anywhere. Thank you both so much for being here and just your light in this podcast space. This is amazing. And we just want to thank you for coming to Q Points.
Thank you. I had an amazing time. It was so joyful.
So joyful. Thank you so much. And we will definitely extend the invitation as soon as we figure out how.
Yes.
Yes. Stay tuned for that crossover. Stay tuned for a special crossover episode.
That's right. That's right.
Popaganda podcast.
Sir Daniel, this has been just an outstanding show. Real quick, for those that are joining us, thank you so much for joining. Subscribe wherever you are joining from. We would love that. You can share the show with your friends, family, colleagues. If you like Q Points, chances are they will like Q Points too. Please make sure they know about the show. Visit our website, qpoints.com. You can subscribe to the newsletter. You can shop our store and get some dope product. But more than anything, we are so happy that y'all choose to spend your time listening to us and hanging out with us. We really do appreciate it.
And like I always say, in this life, you have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play. I'm DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is J. Ray, y'all.
And this has been Q Points Podcast, dropping the needle on Black music history. We will see you on the next go round. Peace.
Peace.